Welcome back to Munchausen's Proxy, where we have been partaking of Peacock's John Wick spin-off series, The Continental. When John Wick came out in 2014, it introduced us to a gritty world layered beneath the real world. It was a world of criminals and assassins, corrupt cops and politicians, and the infrastructure that allowed that world to run. It specifically introduced us to the Continental, a hotel run by Ian McShane's Winston Scott, where criminals could go to relax, safe in the sanctuary provided by and enforced by the hotel's owners, shadowy though they were at the time. The guests could also receive aid in their business activities while they were guests there. Everything from information to accessories needed to complete their business to doctoring when said business went awry. Later iterations of the John Wick franchise fleshed out this world, introducing the high table and various other big fish in this rather large pond in which John Wick swam as the monster they all respected and feared. The Continental is a prequel series that focuses on the origin story of Winston Scott. What follows is full of spoilers as I review the first episode of the series, so you have been warned. We start out in the 1970s and what looks like a New Year's Eve party hosted at the Continental by Cormac O'Connor, the man who runs the hotel at the time. We follow a younger man as he walks through the party. He's a thuggish looking guy, but he is known by those in the party, and he goes to say hello to Cormac, played by Mel Gibson, who treats him like a son. He then heads out of the ballroom the party is being held in to heist the minting coin press used to make the coins that serve as currency in the underworld of John Wick. He and his partner use a hook secured to the vault door to hook a passing subway train down several floors that they have cut holes into, thereby yanking the door off with the force of the speeding train. The partner tried to double-cross him, but Frankie apparently was expecting it and knocks him out, making off with the box taken from the vault. What follows is a mad dash through the hotel worthy of the John Wick series, as thugs emerge from the woodwork to try and kill Frankie and retrieve the box. Having killed and beaten multiple thugs, Frankie finally finds a window to jump out of and lands in a dumpster overflowing with trash. One of the guards from inside comes out and begins spewing bullets into the trash and dumpster with a machine gun, only to get slammed into by a cab driven by an Asian woman. She shouts for Frankie to get in, and they peel out, guards rushing out of the hotel to spray the cab with bullets as they get away. The whole thing was properly frenetic and claustrophobic, and heart-poundingly good. Whoever they got for the fight choreography was excellent, and the actors and stuntmen largely pulled it off with seeming ease. The decor and costuming and sets were superbly 70s, and the music matched it, including the opening credits that played on the 70s New York City aesthetic. After the credits, we see Winston in London trying to convince a wealthy couple to invest in his idea of building car parks to meet the demand of London's suddenly thriving skyscraper building boom. And after the first sequence, this scene dragged ass to the point of almost making me want to bail on the show. It was awkward and clumsy, and Colin Waddell is not very convincing. The wife half of the couple sort of saves the scene. Mrs. Davenport, played by Claire Cooper, was beautiful and smooth. After Winston pulls out the ploy of dropping the name of David Bowie's manager as an investor in his business, with the wife playing along, it is obvious that shenanigans are afoot. She tears into the husband and he scowls before telling Winston he will give him the money as she walks out. Later, as Winston is winding down in his hotel room and looking at the nighttime London sky, a knock at the door reveals that the wife was in on the whole thing. After some congratulatory banter between the two, they do the horizontal mambo. This scene is better than the restaurant scene, but I was still not liking Colin Waddell. He was too stiff and seemingly trying way too hard to come across as earnest. The interaction with the wife before he bones her was better, but not by much. She was doing most of the heavy lifting in the scene, and was fairly good as she aided in prying loose her husband's money while also cuckolding him. Now, none of that was meant as a sexual innuendo. Just straight up, she was much better in the scene. Afterward, he's getting dressed while she is in the shower when he notices the window looks open. He scans the room and sees the room door is also ajar. He looks around worriedly before going to see if there's anyone in the hall outside of the room, but the hall is clear. That is when masked men grab him from behind and begin beating the crap out of him. Outside, a maid pushes a laundry cart up to the door and comes in with a syringe. He stops fighting back and she jabs him in the neck. He passes out and they wheel him out in the cart. And this is where Winston as a character actually started to interest me. This was a quick, well-choreographed scene as he gets abducted. And since you have no idea who he is, you have no idea who might be trying to grab him. Was it the husband's minions? Was the wife next? Was it someone else Winston conned money out of? Something else entirely? Maybe connected to the opening scene? And because we, the audience, don't know, it makes it work all the better. Back in New York, we see Cormac looking out at the city as four guys wait on him. He tells one of them to step forward, and then he orders one of the others to shoot him. The guide reminds him of the rules at the Continental. He feigns recollection before asking the concierge, Karan, to open the balcony window. He continues, agreeing that he can't kill them, but they can kill themselves by jumping off the balcony, since they haven't managed to find the coin press he ordered hunted down. If they do, their families, who are not inside the Continental and thereby protected, will be safe from their screw-up. And Mel Gibson owns the screen every second he is on it. It reminds you why he was one of the top leading men in the 80s and 90s. His charisma just exudes from him as his joviality is cut off with a knife and he gets serious real fast with the men responsible for letting the coin press be stolen. Which is when Winston wakes to find himself in New York City outside of the Continental. He is walking towards the hotel when he hears the guards jump from the balcony and land in the alley. The men who abducted him drag him through the hotel to Cormac's office, to some truly bad music, which was surprising given that the score to the episode to this point was fairly excellent. Cormac asks him where Frankie is, and this is where we find out that Frankie is Winston's brother. Cormac informs Winston that Frankie did well in his employ, well enough to have earned a promotion. However, he recently absconded with something important, not only to him, but to more powerful people. He orders Winston to find his brother so he can get the coin press back, though he doesn't tell him what it was exactly he stole. Winston tries to get Cormac to understand that he and Frankie are no longer in each other's lives, that he has no idea where Frankie is or what he has been up to. Cormac lets him leave, but he has his men follow him. Then we get a scene that was on the gratuitous side, as we see a woman screwing an older guy handcuffed to a pipe above the bed. Turns out she is a detective and he is her boss. Other than a decent boob shot, not sure why we couldn't be given the info dump on these two in the next scene, since we can kind of figure it out based on what happens. Which is when we see a black guy, his sister, and their white friend all kneeling in a rundown warehouse with guns scattered about. Apparently, they are gun dealers, and some thugs are covering the kneeling trio with guns they brought to the party themselves. The German-sounding guy is in charge and doing his villain speech before killing them when the woman mouths off, making him choose to kill her first. However, the gun from the pile he chose explodes in his hand, and the folks on their knees start shooting the thugs with guns they hid... where? Please tell me you idiots were not stupid enough to think gun dealers would show you all of their guns and forgot to search them for more. Anyway, a gunfight breaks out at a gun deal. Color me shocked in a show from Hollywood. They kill all of the thugs but let the boss go as a message to his boss, allowing him to take his fingers with him. Outside, the detective with the nice rack is taking pictures and then calls the dude she was screwing to tell him she is following the buyer to see if she can't identify or catch his boss. The lead detective is in an alley supervising a beatdown by two other detectives. They get in the car after he tells her not to be stupid. She winds up at the Continental and is about to try and follow him in when her boss screeches up to grab her and put her in his car, waving an apology to the doorman. They drive to a nearby alley where he pulls her out and yells at her that whatever is going on in the Continental is not their business. She, however, doesn't want to drop it. She wants to bust the gun buyer's boss, Francis Scott, and she thinks he is in the hotel. He warns her to stay out of there, which, of course, means she is going to go back. Winston then shows up at what looks like a junkyard by the river. He apparently grew up there and is visiting some old friends. Sketchy friends. Unreliable-looking friends. Gee, I wonder what the chances are that he will trust them later, and one of them will betray him. Yeah, that's what I thought at the time too. Anyway, they ask what he is doing back from London, and he tells them about Frankie having gotten him in trouble. The boss, Uncle Charlie, tells him that he might be able to find Frankie at a dojo. Then Uncle Charlie tears him a new one when Winston starts railing against Frankie, saying he doesn't know what Frankie's path has been like. Winston gives up the point and asks for a car. And the car he gives him looks an awful lot like the car John Wick drove in the first and second movies. Charlie gives Winston a gun, and when Winston demurs, he explains that it is so he can defend the car with his life, or don't come back. Oh, and cover it every time he gets out. The gun dealers drive up to an alley in a VW bus. The siblings argue over the gun deal. She gets out and finds the window of the dojo broken. The brother comes in and they restart the argument, this time over even trying to keep the dojo open. It was their father's, and they are dealing guns to keep the doors open and the bills paid. Winston drives up out front of the dojo and covers the car, under the watchful eyes of the largely Asian onlookers in the neighborhood. He goes in and talks to the sister, asking if she has seen Frankie. She gets angry, telling him to get out if he is related to him. There is the sound of a shot from the back, and when she looks away, he pulls his gun. She takes him to the basement stairs hidden by a trapdoor beneath the dojo mats. When they get down there, her fellow gun dealer is what was making the noise. Her brother comes in, and when Winston turns to look at him, she disarms Winston. He hastily explains why he is there looking for Frankie. They explain that his brother burned them when he took off a few months back. The black guy and Frankie met in Vietnam and were friends. Then, a Khmer woman got in his head and changed him. After he burned them, he disappeared into Alphabet City. The brother offers Winston one of his machine guns before he leaves, thinking he will need it given his problems. When Winston gets outside, he takes the now graffitied cover off and leaves. In an abandoned building, a woman approaches the railing looking down on the ground floor from a few stories up to the sound of someone being beaten. Below, a large man in a kilt is punching the guy who double-crossed Frankie during the heist. She asks him where Frankie is, but he has no idea. She informs him that he is going to die, but he still has nothing to tell her. The bruiser asks her what she wants him to do about Cormac, but she orders him to leave Cormac be. That perhaps this time will be his time to fall. And in a scene that made no sense at the time, we see Winston driving into Alphabet City. He stops at a light, looks around confusedly as if not sure where he is, and then he looks in his mirrors and runs the red light to make a sharp U-turn. Yeah, that was it. Even now, thinking back on it, I may be reading more into that scene than there was, since Winston should have figured out that Cormac wouldn't let Winston run around New York while his brother was being hunted without being watched. The detective from earlier is back. This time the doorman at the Continental lets her in. She heads for the bar and asks for a scotch. The bartender stops pouring momentarily when she pays him with dollars. As she drinks, everyone in sight begins acting weird, and she notices the bartender has an ankle holster on when he climbs up to restock one of the shelves. She puts her drink down and leaves to try and get a room. The hostess tries to foist her off on another hotel, and she shows her gun in the process. Then the detective notices someone at the bar paying with a gold coin and leaves. Unless this gets paid off in a later episode, this scene was pointless. Unless it is to show that not everyone is in on how the underworld of John Wick works, or even knows it exists. Winston drives up to an old abandoned building, putting the car cover on, and inside he sees someone sitting in the first row. As the projector turns on to show a Woody Woodpecker cartoon, he realizes it isn't Frankie. Just then, a noose falls over his neck, and the Asian woman from the getaway cab slides down on a rope as Winston is hoisted into the air. He had just enough time to get his hand under the rope before he was dangling by his neck. She ties off the rope and is about to gut him with a rather large knife when Frankie stops her. The Asian woman wants to know who he is and why he is there. Frankie asks Winston what he is doing there, and he tells him that he is there to help him get out of the city, since everyone is hunting him. His brother tells him that they are not big on trust. He explains to Winston that there is an organization out there that is huge, and it is spread from the Continental. He was hired to steal the coin press, but was screwed over. Outside, it looks like Cormac's men have arrived, and they are arming up to head into the theater. Winston tries to offer Frankie money to run and disappear, but he retorts that it won't work, and that is when one of Cormac's men hoists a rocket launcher onto his shoulder and fires it. They are using it to breach the building. The Asian woman, Yen, wants to stay and fight like Frankie promised they would. Frankie wants to accept Winston's suggestion. She gets angry, reminding him that they were supposed to stay and start a family. Oh, and she apparently speaks no English because her conversations with Frankie are all in either Vietnamese or Khmer. That is when the thugs break in, search the building, and realize there is nobody home. One of the thugs outside pulls the cover off the car and realizes it isn't the right car, or the right building. In the car, the brothers and Yen are fleeing into the night. Winston is planning to take them back to the guys they grew up with in order to get out of the city. Yen is pissed about the whole thing, and when Winston makes a snide remark about her, Frankie tells him that he is talking about Frankie's wife. At the junkyard, Charlie is overjoyed to get his car back unscathed, and Winston found Frankie. In that order. He goes into the trailer with Winston, and the unhappy couple stay outside. She informs him that she would have preferred to stay at the theater, dingy as it was. He tries to convince her that Winston is the best chance they have of getting out of their situation. She grumbles that she wished he had let her kill him, but Frankie points out that he did save them from the thugs. She stalks off, explaining that she is keeping an eye out when he asks where she's going, and she climbs up a telephone pole for a good vantage. Back at the Continental, the concierge informs Cormac that their team was eluded. Cormac decides to see if some of their guests might find the brothers for him. He asks to see a set of twins he calls the Weirdos. At the female detective's apartment, she hears someone in the apartment as she is taking a shower. When she gets out, she finds a police file on her kitchen table. It is Frankie's full file, including his juvie and military records. Back at the junkyard, the brothers take a stroll down memory lane together. Winston wants to know why Frankie cut him out. Frankie replies that it was for his own good, so he could build himself a better life, like he apparently had. Meanwhile, as I guessed would happen earlier, one of the junkyard guys drops the dime on the brothers, selling them out via a payphone not far from the trailer. For some reason, they are in the car, talking. Winston promising to get them out of there so Frankie can start over. Yen kills the guy that ratted them out as he sneaks up on the car. She tells Frankie that they have been betrayed. A running gunfight takes place as the car races away. A tire on their car gets shot out, flipping them as they drive through the city. When the thugs arrive, they shoot the crap out of the car, but it is empty. The brothers and Yen take refuge in a building and split up, allowing Frankie to ambush the thugs. We see the weirdos arriving at a building and walking in with their bags. And that's it. Yen winds up finding an unlocked apartment to hide in, but she finds a sleeping mom and a baby. One of the thugs follows her blood trail to the apartment, and they fight, with Yen trying to keep the baby safe during the fight. She eventually wins. Winston shoots one of the guys in the hall, and Frankie kills the rest. They grab the hidden coin press and rejoin Yen, and head for the roof where there is a helicopter waiting for them. One of the guys from the junkyard was a pilot in Vietnam. The weirdos, however, are snipers and hit Yen as they get to the helicopter. Then they shoot the pilot as he starts to take off. They are a few yards in the air when Frankie kisses Yen, telling her and Winston to look after each other. They are only after him and the coin press. He grabs the press and jumps out onto the roof they just left. They watch in horror as he takes the press and stands for the sniper, who shoots him in the head. Back at the Continental, Cormac opens the chest the coin press was in, and inside is not the press, but a monkey statue with his middle finger raised. Cormac roars his anger. The episode ends with Winston showing up on the doorstep of the dojo, asking the siblings for guns, a bleeding Yen in tow. To be honest, I was not expecting much from this show. The trailer looked shaky, almost as if they were slathering on the 1970s period music, costuming, and sets in order to hide deficiencies in the overall show. None of the casting aside from Mel Gibson looked particularly impressive, and the fight choreography was chopped up enough to make me think they were substituting jump cuts for actual choreography and training. And the story did not really grab me. Ian McShane's Winston is a cool character because Ian McShane is a cool actor with the skill and screen presence to demand your attention. Mel Gibson is the only one with those qualities in this show as far as the trailer showed. So after one episode, did it change my opinion? Well, it was better than I was expecting. That's not saying much though, because remember, my expectations were pretty low, as they are with most Hollywood things these days. John Wick's universe is an interesting one, and one that would spark interesting enough stories to do in a series format. However, I was not looking for the origin story of a minor secondary character from the movies, and the casting in the show did not help. I was still not overly impressed with Colin Woodall by the end of the episode. He got better, but I was still not interested in his character. I liked Yen and Frankie much, much more. However, turning the rest of the miniseries into a revenge story might help fix that problem, if Woodall can pull it off. If Young Kate, the actress playing Yen, can learn English, or Woodall learns Vietnamese/Khmer, the pair of them on the hunt for revenge against Cormac and those who betrayed Frankie in the heist of the coin press might make an interesting story. Quite frankly, the detectives bore me. The old male detective is obviously in on the underworld and how it functions, seeing as how he kept trying to steer the younger female detective away. Frankie dying would cut her desire to get in there, but I'm sure there will be some stupid side plot line of her worming her way into figuring things out and then being brought into the fold or being part of the downfall of Cormac. It will probably be severely retarded, since her scenes thus far have been pretty useless. There has not been enough of Iomide Adegun, the concierge of the Continental, to judge him yet. He is playing a younger Charon, the role played by the late and great actor Lance Reddick, who played the concierge in the John Wick movies. I will say he looks nothing like Lance Reddick, who was American. Adegun looks very Nigerian, and also looks at least a few inches shorter than the rather tall Reddick was. However, from what little he has had to do thus far, particularly the scene where he interacts with Winston, I guess he's fine. If his role is this limited throughout the miniseries, fine will do. If he has a bigger role in the other episodes, he will have to show much more than what we have seen so far to live up to Lance Reddick's performance as the stoic, quietly helpful concierge of the Continental. The set design and costuming of the show was pretty good. The music was hit or miss, but it was the 1970s. Hit or miss defined that decade in music. What should be of utmost concern to anyone putting out anything having to do with John Wick is the fight choreography. And for the most part, it was good. Frankie and Yen were particularly impressive in their scenes at the beginning of the episode and the end. And while Yen is skilled and deadly, she is not such an overpowered girl boss that 5'4" young Kate was throwing guys 2 and 3 times her size around with ease. No, she rightly got thrown around herself in the course of her fight at the end. The fights were the very least we could expect out of something purporting to be from, quote, the world of John Wick. The show thus far is decent enough to go into the second episode. The story is intriguing enough to earn my attention for another hour. What will you do with it after that? That is all I have for this video. If you like what I do here, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and comment down below. It is all appreciated. Episode 2 should be in a day or two. I may do the second and third episode reviews together. We will see after I watch the second episode. Until then, tschüss.